Hey, you dorks, this is Gunnar Hansen, Leatherface from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you are listening to The Dorkening.
Hi, I'm Brian Johnson, and although you probably accidentally stumbled across it and have no idea why you're watching it, you are in fact watching The Dorkening.
Hello, this is Tom Kenny, voice actor, the voice of the Ice King on Adventure Time, and SpongeBob SquarePants. Meow. Oh, Gary the Snail, too. Hey, guess what you're filling your eye holes and ear holes with? The Dorkening! Oh, I love The Dorkening. Very popular in Ooh. And Bikini Bottom.
Hi, I'm Lou Ferrigno. You're watching The Dorkening. And you know what? You don't like me when I get angry, so don't get me angry. You better keep watching The Dorkening.
Hey guys, this is Felissa Rose, and you're watching The Dorkening.
Hey guys, it's Courtney Palm. We're shooting Death House, and you're watching The Dorkening.
This is Anthony Michael Hall, and you're watching The Dorkening. Stay tuned, my friends are going to show you what entertainment's all about, baby.
The Dorkening.
The Dorkening and all affiliated shows are not intended for anyone under the age of 18. The following may contain discussions or scenes that have adult situations, graphic violence, nudity, strong sexual content, and graphic language. This show is intended for mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Rise and shine, my sinners. When Father Evil starts his day, he gets a little deadly. Deadly Grounds coffee has the richest, smoothest flavor you'll find anywhere. It's sinfully delicious. Once you go deadly, you never go back. Order yours at getdeadly.com. Coffee's so good, it's scary.
Happy Monday, everybody. Welcome to Crazy Spotlight. My name's Leo. I'm the monkey behind the keyboard here. And as always, Patsy, how's it going, my friend?
It's going all right. I went out to Gloucester today, met somebody that I hadn't officially met, one of my online friends. It's so weird that, you become friends with people and it's like, oh, I'm such good friends with this person. Oh, what are they like? I don't know. I never met them. It's so weird. It was very nice, and I had only been to Gloucester once, and I went out. I was like, all right, well, now it's time to go home. I gotta find some gas, and I didn't know where the gas station was, but turns out if you just keep driving a little bit, you're gonna hit the ocean, so you don't want to drive there. But I was able to accidentally get onto 128 and go all the way home on a quarter tank of gas. I was very impressed with my car's gas mileage today. So that's my story for today.
That my nerves would have been a wreck. Yeah, it is. I can't take that. Philip, how's it going?
Good. I'm actually shocked because when you're inside 128 around Boston, you can't not find a gas station. So I figured you would be all right, Pat, even if you.
Oh, I didn't want to spend $3.30 a gallon.
That's true. Yeah.
So I should have added the qualifier. I needed to find gas that wasn't $3.30 a gallon. So
right. And it's tough. It's tough nowadays. I'll tell you that.
Well, I mean, I made it from Gloucester into Rockport, back to Gloucester, all the way into Westboro on a quarter tank of gas. So that's pretty good.
Like I said, my nerves would have been a wreck. So Phil, my friend, are you the type of person that fills up their gas tank as soon as you get like half tank or?
Yeah. I try. At least when I'm going somewhere. If I'm just local, it's not as important. But yeah.
Okay.
I mean, look at his name. Of course, he's gonna make sure his gas tank is full.
Philip, that's right.
That voice you heard is R.W. Martin, our good friend. How's it going, sir?
Good. I've actually run out of gas a few times, and twice I was right on an exit, and at the end of the exit was a gas station, so I was able to coast to this gas station. But a couple other times I weren't as lucky. But yes, Gloucester, for those of you who don't know, is where the Perfect Storm movie was based out of. Just a little trivia for you all. Thank you.
Totally forgot about that. Patsy, we have an extraordinary guest this evening. Would you care?
Yeah, I will introduce him. I figured that's what you were going to say. But yes, our guest tonight, you may know him from not only his film production studio, First Team Productions, but you may also know him as Chip from My Three Sons. It's Stanley Livingston, I presume.
How do you do there?
How are you?
Jeez, I'm hearing you guys complaining about $3.39 gas. Our gas is like, if you go up to LA, you're talking about $4.99 to $5.99 a gallon.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's crazy.
When it was like $1 a gallon, I filled up a bunch of plastic bags and I got them in my closet. So if my car runs out, I can always.
Good.
I'm so old. I remember when gas was 19 cents a gallon. That's the real problem.
Oh my gosh.
I know this is totally off topic, but since it's part of the conversation, my work went remote and I drive a hybrid, so I think I filled up a total of like 3 times last year. It was
wow.
Yeah,
you're lucky. Wow. That's great.
Just crazy. But so we don't want to talk about gas. We want to talk about our awesome guest. And I grew up watching My Three Sons. I'm sure a bunch of you have as well. What was that experience like? So it's 12 years, 380 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And so what was that experience like?
Well, it's literally been on the air for 61 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, first generation was when it was in prime time. Then it went to syndication for about 12, 15 years. Nick at Night came along, put it on in their lineup that ran from midnight to 6. That worked out so well for them, they decided to create TV Land and put it on there for about 10 years. And it's been on, I can't even count the number of networks since then. And right now it's currently on MeTV. So, it's a show that it's like a hand-me-down show. My parents handed it down to me. I handed it down to my kid. And now it's going to my grandkids. But it's a show. We did the pilot in 1959, went on the air in 1960. It was a show that starred a huge movie star at that time named Fred MacMurray, which probably doesn't resonate as much as it did back in the 1960s. But when he came to TV, he was the biggest movie star in Hollywood, the highest paid guy. And he and his wife had just adopted twins, and he didn't want to go off and do movies, for 2-3 months at a time. And next thing you know, your kids are 18 years old. So he was actually looking around for a series to be in. And the producer, Don Feddersen, pitched him with My Three Sons, saying, hey, if you want to do this, we'll work around you. You can come in and work for 2 months, go away for the summer for 3 months, and then come back for a couple months at the end. And, we'll finish off the episodes. And you'll own half the show and half the whatever money comes down the pike later on when it gets sold again and again and again. So, Fred had just come off a huge run in the feature film industry. He goes all the way back to the 1930s and was in Double Indemnity, The Egg and I, and right before My Three Sons, he just got through starring in The Cane Mutiny, The Apartment, The Shaggy Dog, The Absent-Minded Professor, and here came My Three Sons. So when he went on that show, the networks were beside themselves that they had captured a movie star of that caliber to appear and do the daily grind of a TV series, which it sounds glamorous. It's actually a glorified factory job.
Yeah, it's interesting because nowadays you see so much of that cross-pollination between TV and movies, especially where you have, some of the like say the Marvel properties where it's like, all right, you're contractually obligated. You'll be, in 3 movies, but you also have to make, cameos on, X amount of TV series, and whether they focus the TV series all around you or whether you're an ancillary character. There's a lot of that. Like, have you, do you kind of look at this today and be like, wow, can you imagine, back in your time, when you were on your show, and it's like, oh, here's this TV series, and oh yeah, there's John Wayne, and oh yeah, there's Spencer Tracy, and they're doing a buddy cop drama, in between filming some movies.
Well, I mean, that cross-pollination did happen a little bit. Didn't happen to extreme. I mean, sometimes it would have been ludicrous to have, like, the grandfather from, I don't know, the Real McCoys or Judd Clampett suddenly on our show. Might have made it funnier, though. But, we had big movie stars that whose careers were, I don't want to say they were in a decline, but, wasn't what they once were in the 40s and 50s. They came onto the show. Jimmy Stewart was a guest star, Sylvia Sidney, Lou Ayres, all the way back to All Quiet on the Western Front. The show was kind of a mix of the characters that were actually on the show, but it also was a place for movie stars who, didn't want to sit at home every day to find work. And it was a breeding ground for stars of the future. We had a lot of people that in the inception of their careers came on to My Three Sons. Remember Martin Sheen working on it, Beau Bridges, Sally Kellerman, Jodie Foster. There's, I think, a website. If you look up My Three Sons full cast, you will be blown away by the number of people that appeared on the show, who had illustrious careers. I just went on to have illustrious careers.
I just have to ask, like, one of my favorite people in the world was Jimmy Stewart, and what was it like working with him? Like,
oh wow, well, that was an honor, to do that. I was familiar with his films, and to have him actually working on the show. It was kind of a promotional show. That was kind of a strange thing. Somehow the oldest brother on the show, Tim Considine, in those days, you were going to be drafted. So you had to go join something. And he had joined the Air Force. And Jimmy Stewart was in the Air Force. And I guess somebody knew that. And they said, why don't we put together a show? I think what they were trying to do was have Tim Considine's date to show up for his whatever, like a couple weeks a year, postponed, and they knew Jimmy Stewart, and I guess he arranged it. And then in return, he said, could we do a thing promoting the Air Force on the show and talking about the Air Force? So that show had a little bit of promotion for the Air Force in it. Yeah, that wasn't my problem yet. I was only 10 years old, so I wasn't worried about the draft for another 8 years. It wasn't until I turned 18 and suddenly realized I had 10 days to show up at selective service that my blood ran cold. It was like right at the height of the Vietnam War.
Oh, wow. I read something today that Tim directed some episodes. Yes. And what was the friction like? Because he was younger than Fred MacMurray, and how did that all, like, what is the story behind that?
That was the friction. Yeah, he had written an episode, and then later he wanted to direct one, and they agreed to it, and it actually went successful. And I think it just put Fred kind of a little bit in an awkward position for reasons you just stated, this younger guy. And it's kind of weird to me because he was a really cool guy, and I think he could have probably got past that. But the real problem was because of the way we shot the series. We never really worked in one episode to completion. In other words, you start it, you normally, for a half-hour show, it's about 3 to 4 days to film it, and then you move on to the next show and the next director, and you do that. Well, we were shooting 39 episodes a year in the beginning, so we would have had potentially 39 directors had we shot that way. But because of this deal with Fred MacMurray, we could be shooting into 4 or 5, sometimes like 9 episodes a day, little scenes here, little scenes there, and they all had Fred in them. So that required the idea that we really couldn't have a director for each episode. They hired a director for each year that we did it, and they were responsible for all the episodes we were generating. So what happened was they had to stop doing that during that one episode where Tim was directing, and let him go right through that show and finish it out. And that's how it got done. And then later, I think the next year, he wanted it as part of his contract to direct at least, I don't remember, it was 5 or 10 episodes. And I think they went to Fred at that point and said, look, this is what's going on. How do you feel about it? And he just kind of didn't want to go along with it. And Tim said, see you later.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you say you film like, 13, 20, 40 episodes at once or at the same time, is it because you're in the living room and you're filming all these living room scenes at once?
Yeah, that's kind of how it worked. It basically it was done that way so we could pick up bits and pieces or scenes. We had a 2-page scene and a 5-page scene. It wasn't always in, the kitchen for the full day. They would move it around from the living room, a couple scenes in the kitchen, one in, Chip's bedroom, Chip and Robbie in there, beginning, maybe one in Bub's room, or, sometimes they involved cast members and they had sets on other stages that they had built to do those. So, yeah, that's how it would be. And then the next day would be the same thing. But in the beginning, when Fred started working on the show, he would his deal was to come in at 8:00 and to leave at 6. And every single scene that we shot had Fred McMurray in it. He didn't get a moment's rest. And he worked very hard. What he had was, though, in the middle of it, he'd get to go away and go fishing with his family or whatever they did, off to their ranch in Montana and, property, I think a vineyard in Northern California that they eventually sold to the Gallo family. So, and then he'd come back for a couple months at the end of the year and pick up all the scenes that we hadn't shot or scenes with him. Sometimes we'd shoot a scene that he would walk in the front door. And during the summer, we would shoot the first part of it and cut, and then they would have somebody step in with a Polaroid to see exactly where we were at that moment, and for wardrobe continuity, and hopefully your hair matched, or hopefully I didn't have a growing spurt that year while Fred was gone. Because one year that happened. I think when I was about 14, I think I grew like 5 inches in like 5 months. So I look like little Abner, my legs were sticking out the bottom. Nothing fit anymore, but we were stuck with the wardrobe. But yeah, that was a concern, and haircuts and props matching. But if you watch the show with a fine-tooth comb, you find a lot of bloopers in there and continuity errors, wrong pants. I'll be wearing certain color in the beginning, and then after Fred gets there, they kind of have a greenish hue. So yeah, we finally had it down to a science where you didn't buy polished cottons that were tan and then darker tan and then that greenish color they had. It caused a lot of problems.
Now, since you brought up the age growth and all that, how was it working first off with your brother Barry and the two of you growing up, where I guess everybody in the world that watched the show were able to watch you grow up from a little boy to a young adult?
Yeah. Well, I literally started the show we did the pilot when I was 9 years old. It went on the air just before I was 10 years old. Barry didn't work on the show at the beginning. It was my 3 sons, but it was myself, Don Grady, and Tim Considine. And even that was tenuous during the pilot. During the pilot, we shot with, I guess it was 3 different Robbies. We started to shoot, and there was an actor, you guys probably watched that show too. It was called Fury with Bobby Diamond. Had the horse. Anyway, he was the star of that with Peter Graves, and he was the one that they had selected to play Robbie. And I don't know what kind of issue there was. I don't know whether it was with him. I don't think it was with him, but with his mother being a stage mother, and kind of messed it up for him. They let him go, and then they hired another guy, and we started shooting again. And we shot for a day or so, and then they stopped, and they decided this guy didn't work for them or whatever. They said he wasn't funny, so they let him go. And then at that time, my mom was friends with an agent named Mary Grady, who had a son that was breaking into the industry. He was about 15, 16, and had done a couple films, and he was actually a former Mouseketeer. And so my mom called Mary and said, hey, we just got rid of Robbie again. Get Don down here right away. And so Don came in, and they were happy with him. And so shooting resumed. In fact, when it resumed, they decided to change the name of the family. We were always the Douglas family, Chip Douglas, Steve Douglas. We were actually the McPhersons in the first 2 episodes. And then they decided, for whatever reason, to make it simplified and just make it Douglas. And so we started shooting, and we did that with Don Grady, and they were happy with him. And oh yeah, the guy that didn't think that he could do comedy, that was Ryan O'Neal.
Oh wow!
So had he done My Three Sons, he wouldn't have had the illustrious career. He became famous, I guess, on Peyton Place, and went on to do big movies with Barbra Streisand, and
Paper Moon with
his daughter. Yeah, that was a great film, Peter Bogdanovich film. But yeah,
And he met
so how?
Farrah Fawcett too.
Yeah, and Farrah Fawcett, that wasn't too bad either. But,
Sure.
yeah, he seemed to be a nice guy when we worked with him, and I don't know what their issues were, and sometimes you just don't find out. That's how showbiz is. There's a lot of shows like that. It was like the one with what was it? All the women that lived together, the
Golden Girls.
Golden Girls. There was actually a fourth Golden Girl, if you remember the beginning, and somehow, I guess I figured they didn't need her character. And they dropped her, and yeah, that happens all the time. So anyway, we shot with Tim. Tim was on the show. Don Grady, myself was the final lineup, and then William Frawley, who was on the Lucy show, was the original grandfather on the show. So he came in, played Bub, and that went on about the third year of the show. My brother did a guest spot. He played a college, not a college, but a school friend of mine, and they kind of introduced his character, and he kind of looked different than a lot of the kids on TV in those days. He had glasses, buck teeth, and kind of a Mr. Moto haircut, where most of the kids look like me or Dennis the Menace, Jay North, the little blonde Aryan look. But Barry, prior to appearing on My Three Sons, actually, we did a movie together in 1958 called Rally Around the Flag Boys, and Paul Newman and Joanne Woodward were our mother and father on that. And we were shooting that day, and Barry, we were supposed to be watching the TV set and ignoring Paul Newman when he came in. And the director was increasingly getting more irritated with my brother, who didn't look like he was looking at the TV set the way he was directed to do. And finally by noon, he blew his cork, and they had Barry sent to an ophthalmologist during the lunch hour. And it turned out Barry had cross eyes and needed glasses, and he was summarily fired. And by 1 o'clock, I had a new brother. If you watch the movie carefully, though, he's still in one scene. There's a scene where Joanne Woodward, and I forget this great character actor, they're shaking him upside down. He swallowed pennies, and they're trying to shake the pennies out of him. Well, if you look carefully, it's Barry upside down. So he kind of started there and started doing, different TV shows and different movies. And by the time he was cast, he had done a movie with Jerry Lewis called The Errand Boy. We actually did an Ozzie and Harriet episode together. In fact, it was in end of 59, I think we did it. And my parents had to tell Ozzie, because that's kind of where I got my start as an actor. I got my first line. I was able to join the union. I didn't think he was going to call me back, but he did. And I did 4 or 5 episodes a year from about 1956 to 1959 as a neighborhood kid on that show. And the very last episode I did, Barry was in it. They hired Barry too to play another little neighborhood kid in it. And, with his look, with his glasses and his buck teeth, he was just so darn cute that Ozzie really liked him, and he took off, just kept going where I left off. They made him the regular neighborhood kid. So Barry, by the time he came onto our show, had amassed quite a few credits in movies and TV shows and TV series, so they knew who he was, and he became a school chum. And then about a year later, when Tim Considine decided to leave the show, well, the show was called My Three Sons, and we were going to be down to 2 sons. So just because there's no nepotism in show business, my brother got the part.
Now, what was it like working with Ricky Nelson?
It was great. It was fun. He was a really nice guy. And I remember, he was just at the inception of his musical career. So he was always around the set, playing guitar and, hanging out, showing me how to do chords. And yeah, he was a great guy. And Ozzie, you have to really give him credit, was very entrepreneurial. That whole music thing was just breaking for him. In fact, I remember I went over to the other sound stage. They had a couple of sound stages there, a swing set, where they decided to take one of the songs and pretend like Rick was playing it. I guess it was a high school sock hop or something. So they had him up on stage. They brought in about 50 screaming girls were all in the front. And I remember I was off camera watching it, but yeah, he sang that song, Poor Little Fool.
Yeah.
And that I think was his first record, if I'm not mistaken, to kind of hit the airwaves. And that ended up selling so many records because it appeared tagged on to the end of an Ozzie and Harriet episode. And you go, maybe I should do this every week.
Yeah.
How quickly can we write another hit and put it on the end of a Ozzie and Harriet episode and let whatever 60 million people every week see it? So that's kind of what happened from that point on. At least every couple months they would do another song and sell millions of records. And he started touring when they weren't filming, and that was just a great set to be on and around. The Nelsons were like family almost. They just treated everybody so nice. There was never any yelling and screaming, unlike other shows I worked on where it was either some cast member was crazy and have a meltdown, or the director would think he's Hitler or something and start screaming at everybody. But yeah, Ozzie was pretty much like you saw him on there. He just real low key and never knew his lines. He had a teleprompter off to the side of the camera, which if you look carefully, you'll see him glancing at it. And that's where he was picking up his dialogue from. And, they did the same thing. They were shooting, 39 episodes a year back in those days. And they're actually the longest running sitcom. My Three Sons is the second longest running.
Wow.
We amassed 380 episodes, and I think they did 430. So they went 14 years.
Wow. I was born in 65, but I grew up, with my stuff from the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but I also grew up with the stuff from before then. So, all those, as we call them, black and white shows, Leave It to Beaver, My Three Sons, the original I Love Lucy, The Honeymooners, and all that stuff has been a big part of my life. But it's hard to, I have two daughters who are 23 and 18. I tried to bring them up on some of that.
Yeah.
And I just feel, and this is my opinion, but I feel like we've lost writing and we've lost story.
Well,
and
I can explain that to you in a minute.
Yeah. Everything relies on CGI nowadays. And there's no stories that really tell anything anymore, in my opinion.
Well, there isn't. And there's a reason for that. In those days, people that were writers on TV shows, before they became the writers, they actually had a life. They did something. They went in the army. They worked in a furniture store or a shoe store, or they were newsmen, doctor, whatever. And then, they added writing to what they wanted to do. So, I think they had a feel for life. The kind of writing you see now, what skills did the writer bring to the table? None, except that he watched Brady Bunch and this show and that show. And so you're getting all these plots and, storylines kind of regurgitated in a new way. At least that's my opinion.
And I mean,
not original.
I try to be careful what I say, but I can watch an episode of The Honeymooners and laugh as hard as I did when it first aired. And the same thing with like All in the Family and Carol Burnett show and, all those old shows. Whoever knew how to write that stood the test of time. And nowadays you watch something once and somebody goes, hey, you want to watch this with me? I've seen it already. I don't need to see it again.
Yeah.
But I'll watch an old show again,
I totally agree. Yeah. There's certain shows that you can just, you watch them over and over. Yeah, and The Honeymooners, I think, really has stood the test of time. Funny is just funny, and the situations that were created were great. Or, if you watch Lucy, it's some of the same writers actually that worked on The Honeymooners, and you can tell that, by the style of writing. But yeah, they had a lot of great writers, and I mean, we actually had female writers that worked on My Three Sons, so that was kind of an unusual thing. Most of the writers were male. We had Neil Simon's brother, Danny Simon, was one of our writers, but there were other ones that were just phenomenal. At developing storylines for the casts that they were, writing for. And it just depends on the show, too, how broad the humor was. My Three Sons was very gentle humor, wasn't even as funny, I guess, in certain ways with the physical comedy, say, of The Honeymooners. The situations were a little bit different. But, it was very gentle and I don't say it was preachy, but it was very family oriented. And, the whole idea of the show is this guy raising his 3 kids. It was an all-male household. That was the conceit of the show. You know, you got everybody there, from a little kid to a teenager to a guy about to turn 21, and then a grandfather, and then a widower that's trying to raise him and doing the best he can, and is always flummoxed by everybody's behavior. But the idea of the show was he never told us what to do. If you watch it carefully, he'll never lecture us or whatever. The idea was he had already imbued in us the qualities he wanted. And even though it looked like we were going to do something terrible at the last second, we wouldn't. And he'd always, you know, be like this, smiling in the background that we did the right thing, you know. So I think that's the way most of our episodes worked. So as long as it fit that paradigm, you know, you could put it on My Three Sons. Yeah, later it got a little more ridiculous. You know, it was just, you know, you had My Three Sons. You know, it was kind of like, I was going to say kind of like Bonanza, except we didn't have horses. You know, we had Chevrolets. And even on Bonanza got ridiculous. It's sort of like, hey, you guys are getting pretty old. Don't you want to go into town and meet some women or something? What's going on out there on the Ponderosa? But,
Right.
you know, they finally, in our case, brought women into the show. Don Grady met Tina Cole, and the show evolved. Then suddenly there was a woman in the show, and she's pretty hot looking. And then the next year they had triplets. And then they decided Fred McMurray's character should meet a woman. He met Beverly Garland, who had this little 7, 8-year-old girl. And then I think about 2 years later, I met Polly, and we eloped to Mexico and came back. And, you know, had the show gone a couple more years, they would have married off the dog, I think, Trample.
Well, also because of that, and we'll talk about it in a second here. And I also want to bring up Lucille Ball. But there was also an attempt to spin off the show, and I want to talk more about that. But I want to take a break for a quick second. As you know, we love supporting, you know, all our guests here. There's a bunch of information up above or down below, depending on where you're watching or listening to us. You can watch My Three Sons on Me TV, and there's information there. And if you want to learn more about Stanley and his production company, I have that there as well. But one of our sponsors is Terrificon. It's a con coming up, real soon. Awesome. Here we go.
Meanwhile, near Terrificon. Imagine being frozen in ice for 70 years.
Oh, God, no. I can't stand the cold and ice. But seriously, you should all go to Terrificon. It's the biggest comic book convention in all of Connecticut. It's got stars from all those DC comic book movies, and Doctor Who, and Star Wars.
Oh, I love sci-fi.
Yeah, and they also have all the best comic book artists and writers. The people that make the Hulk comic books, Captain America comics, Spider-Man, and what's the other guy with the hat and the whip and the fedora?
Dr. Jones.
Yeah, that guy too. It's all at Terrificon. It's on July 30th to August 1st in Connecticut. For more information, go to Terrificon.com.
Visit Terrificon.com for all your Terrificon needs. Is this X-ray?
No, that's the 4th floor.
Are you sure?
Trust me.
That's going to be at Mohegan Sun coming up soon. So Stanley, do you do a lot of cons?
Hardly do any. Well, especially right now. The last 2 years, I just bowed out of them.
Yeah.
I mean,
We all
the last
did.
thing I want to do is go somewhere and have 1,000 people come up and shake my hand or sneeze on me or whatever. Yeah, I'd go through probably quarts and quarts of that antibacterial stuff. I know they're doing them. They're starting to do them again. And I did a couple of virtual ones, kind of like what we're doing here, where they had some people on. It was pretty fun. My brother did it, and Dawn Lynn and Tina Cole did it. And then we did it. I mean, it was a kind of a real mashup, though. We did it with, with what was her, Mary Wilson from the Supremes, and Jerry Mathers from Leave It to Beaver. So it was kind of, we're all kibitzing with each other. It's kind of like being on the Brady Bunch or the Hollywood Squares.
Yeah.
These squares. So yeah.
Yeah, I met Tony and Jerry a couple of years ago, right before COVID hit. There was a con, and they were both there, and I was getting my picture taken with Jerry, and Tony stood up, and I go, "Oh, you're going to be in the picture too?" And Tony goes, "Oh, I don't know." And Jerry goes, "You're not that big a star, Tony. Get in the picture."
Yeah, Jerry rules the world.
It was so funny.
Now you mentioned Lucille Ball a couple times. Now your brother was on I Love Lucy. Did you get on any episodes of that? And from what I understand, it was filmed like right
Yes.
next to.
Right next door, actually. We were on stage 11. They were on stage 12 for a while. They did the Lucy show. And yeah, so they were right next door. So yeah, I, would interact with Lucy every morning going to work. She'd pull up in her big white convertible Lincoln Continental, and she'd be over there. Sometimes we go over and watch them rehearse and shoot the show. Barry actually did an episode. I think this was just prior to him coming on to My Three Sons, but he played like a nephew of Mr. Mooney. I think that was the guy's name, Gil Gordon.
Yeah.
And she gives him a mohawk. She mohawked my brother by accident. So it was a pretty funny episode. And he had a scalp piece on that hit his hair, and then she just mohawked it. But yeah, it was a great lot to work on. I mean, not only was Lucy there in those days, but we go up and watch other people do their shows and hang out and got to talk to them. But they were shooting Hogan's Heroes there. Let's see who else. Ben Casey. He wasn't fun to hang out with. He was kind of not such a nice guy. The Untouchables, Star Trek.
Yeah, was it Desilu Studios at the time, or was it
Desilu, My Favorite Martian? Yeah, so it was cool just to go on and be there, and usually the people knew you were shooting, so they come over and talk to you for a while. And yeah, it was like your little clubhouse or something when I grew up, that all those people were shooting there. We shot there for 7 years. Then we moved to the Valley to CBS Cinema Center, which was owned by CBS, and the show was sold to CBS. I think it was the 5th year, and we finally moved over to that lot. And they were shooting Gunsmoke there, Gilligan's Island, Wild Wild West. Used to go over and watch Robert Conrad knock some poor we had probably the cameraman out. He'd box with them at lunchtime. They had a boxing ring set up, and he would box his own crew guys. So that was kind of crazy. And then next door to us, they were shooting Family Affair. So that was fun. Go to lunch with Sebastian Cabot, Mr. French.
Yeah.
Watching me eat like a pile of fat for lunch. I'm like, oh my God, no wonder you're so fat.
Brian Keith, Johnny Whitaker.
Yeah, Johnny Whitaker. Yeah, well, that
Kathy
show
Garter.
was actually produced by my boss, Don Fedderson. He was the producer of that. Then they had another show, I think it was called To Rome with Love, with John Forsythe. And they also did The Smith Family that had Henry Fonda and a young Ronnie Howard in it. So they were our next door neighbors too. So yeah, we'd all hang around together and pal around together because we all knew each other. And occasionally they would shoot sequences from streets of San Francisco there, like the soundstage work. So yeah, I got to meet Michael Douglas and Carl Malden. And it's good times.
And all their guest stars too. That's another show that had a lot of guest stars that became big.
Yeah, there was a lot of really cool things going on. Well, they shot movies there too. It wasn't just that. They shot Little Big Man, and I remember went over and watched Dustin Hoffman, and I think it was Faye Dunaway.
Faye Dunaway, that's right.
Yeah. So that was kind of fun, and all kinds of movies that come through and go over and try and meet the director, and yeah.
Now I see you worked with Dom DeLuise. How was that?
I did voiceovers with Dom. Yeah, when My Three Sons, I think it was before it ended. But they hired me to do voices. I worked on a TV series called The Roman Holidays.
Yeah.
And I guess they liked what I did because they kept calling me back to do like miscellaneous voices on the Devlins and Scooby-Doo's. But yeah, he was on that show. I'm trying to think of some of the... Dawes Butler was the guy that I wanted to meet because he was Hanna-Barbera's Mel Blanc. He did all, Huckleberry Hound and Yogi Bear. And, when I was a kid watching all that, I just couldn't wait to meet him. It's like when I did My Three Sons, I'd seen Fred McMurray before and saw The Absent-Minded Professor, but the guy that really stoked me that was going to be on the show was William Frawley.
Oh yeah. So did he leave
Hooky to watch I Love Lucy?
So he went from I Love Lucy to My Three Sons then?
Yeah. He came over on that show, and he was really my favorite character on that show. I just like how he was all cranky, and I think I just had an affinity for him because I never really knew either of my real grandfathers. They had passed away, and I felt cheated in life that I didn't have a grandfather. And I set out, my mission was to make him my grandfather. And I think I succeeded. Yeah, we were like inseparable while he was on the show and doing.
And he the only reason he left the show was he unfortunately passed. Is that right?
Yeah, he didn't pass, before they kind of let him go first. And what happened is he went in for a physical. We all would have to go for a physical every year before we start shooting. And I guess the doctor that did his physical said, "Hey, this guy doesn't have a heartbeat." I don't even know if he's alive. And they couldn't get insurance for him. And unfortunately, because of the way we shot, if we had shot one episode at a time, we could have probably kept going at some point and, shot shows. And if he happened to pass away during his episode, they would have lost 2 or 3 days and that would have been it. But because we shot all over the place and so many different scripts, they would have little bits and pieces of Bill and, it would have really fouled up the season. So they just were heartless and decided, to let him go. And that probably precipitated his demise. I think he died right on Hollywood Boulevard. He collapsed on Hollywood Boulevard.
Wow. Now, I also see that you worked with Pamela Ferdin, if I'm saying her name right, who was also the voice of Lucy on the Peanuts and stuff. And my question, I guess, is I know a lot of child actors from back in the day either stayed in touch then or are now back in touch with each other. How many people that you share that with, like that were child actors at the time, do you still kind of have a rapport with?
Well, Tony's a best friend. I've known Tony since I was probably about 6 years old, but I didn't really know him at first because of the movie industry. He was a swimmer and a diver. And that's what I did before I was in My Three Sons. I, was at a swimming pool every day. And we both had the same diving coach, a guy named Johnny Riley at the Hollywood Athletic Club that was training us how to dive off a high dive, a platform.
Yep.
So I knew him from there. And then, he got started on Leave It to Beaver. And then suddenly I was seeing him on TV. And, I was trying to find my own way in, I guess, before My Three Sons. Like I said, I did a lot of other people's shows. And at first, I didn't even have any dialogue. I was hired as an extra, just another kid. I was almost Dennis the Menace. I was up for that. And I think it was between myself, Jay, and another actor of that era named Stanley Fafara, who I think ended up actually on Leave It to Beaver, was a neighborhood kid. But my booby prize was I got to be in, a couple episodes of Dennis the Menace. But Tony I knew early. I still know him. We're still friends. In fact, we just went on before the COVID hit, a cruise together. Know Jerry Mathers, Paul Peterson, Jay North, who played on Dennis the Menace. God, you name it, I probably know.
Right.
Yeah.
Like the people who are like on the Waltons are still very, very close. And the Brady Bunch kids are still close. And then other people who, like you say, we worked on this set, they worked on that set. You became friends. I was just trying to figure out how, how many people.
Barry on the Brady Bunch, I know him, but that show came a little bit later than us. Or David Cassidy, knew him. He was, on the Partridge Family, but that was, maybe 10 years later or something when it kind of went on the air. But if you didn't meet the people back then, a lot of us were competing for parts back then too.
Right.
When in between for movies, we would go out, and I'd see Jay North or, Butch Patrick from the Munsters or whatever, you see all these guys back in those days, but we're all still friends. I think that's one of the thing, not the Comic-Cons, but the actual autograph shows that kind of started in the early 90s. That was, to me, kind of a fun thing because I saw people that, I hadn't seen in 10, 20 years or, worked with when I was a kid, like Kent McCord. I knew Kent McCord when he was on Ozzie and Harriet and was like Rick's best friend. And, by now he had been doing Adam 12 and, had a career and,
Galactica.
Yeah.
I met him a couple, 4 years ago, and one of the nicest guys ever.
Yeah, exactly. Or just people that, I'm just a guy too, so I look at people in the movies and go, oh, I'd like to meet that guy someday. There was a movie called Plan 9 from Outer Space. And I saw that guy one time at the guy that played the pilot. I forget his name, but yeah, I just had to go up and, introduce myself and talk to him. And he knew who I was. And, we were talking. I said, God, when you're doing that movie, didn't you have a clue that it was like a horrible movie? When you were on the plane and steering it with like a wooden handle, that should have been a clue.
Yeah.
Gregory Walcott, that's his name. And, he did a lot of legitimate movies. If you watch a lot of Clint Eastwood movies, he must have got hired about 4 or 5 times in Clint Eastwood movies after that. But, in those days you could do those movies and be, excused later. I think everybody had some kind of film like that they were ashamed of. In fact, it's a funny story. I knew Marty Milner, and when those autograph shows were going on, I called him and said, hey, do you want to do this guy that I know does them? And they're going to do one in New York. So he goes, oh, yeah, I'd like to try that. Let me call Kent, see if he wants to go with me. So it turned out he did. So I said, well, you got pictures? He says, I got a ton of Adam 12 pictures. I go, well, Marty, you're probably going to sell some of those. I go, but do you have any, what was the name of this film? 13 Ghosts. I said, do you have any 13 Ghosts pictures? He goes, 13 Ghosts? He said, I don't even tell people I was in that. I go, well, if I were you, I'd go out and get about 100 of them printed up. And I said, because I got a hunch you would sell them. So he says, all right. So he did. And when at the show, he came up to me, he says, I'm sure glad you told me to get those 13 ghost, photos done. He goes, I sold every one of them. He goes, I hope I brought 200.
That's great.
I hope he gave you half
Nobody
the
wants
money.
me in Adam 12. They want me in 13 Ghosts.
Yeah, that movie lives on. It was even remade. So
Yeah, I
Usually
thought the remake was kind of, I don't know. I guess I just was an aficionado of the first one. You wore the glasses. They gave you the headache so you could see the ghosts. The second one was kind of weird.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Patsy?
I was saying, it's usually the cult and the underground following stuff that, you like. I met Chris Sarandon at Rock and Shock. And I was like, oh, you don't have any of your Law and Order stuff. Like,
yeah.
And he's like, oh, I didn't even think about that. And it's like, there are people here with their kids that watch Law and Order. I mean, not the kids so much, but.
I would have liked the picture of him in lipstick with Margot Hemingway, but I don't know if you had any of those. Yeah, so.
I think
it's funny what the fans want. You think they would want you. I mean, for me, it's pretty much My Three Sons. They're probably second is How the West Was Won, because I was in that feature. So people are, whatever reason, really into that particular Western. But I got people coming up to me because I was in a film called Private Parts, not the Howard Stern one, but the Paul Bartel film from about 1974. And I guess they play it all the time on TCM. And it's kind of a Hitchcockian murder mystery kind of thing. It's pretty lurid, but it's got a fan base. And, I had to go basically find a place I could find the picture to bring it.
How was it working with Paul Bartel? Because he was a character, I heard.
He was a real character, yeah. I think he envisioned himself as like Alfred Hitchcock. He had a lot of his mannerisms and his way. And even, the film that I did actually got a rave review from Judith Crist in New York. And then the problem with the film was the title. When I signed on, it was called Vital Parts, which was bad enough. Then it became Private Parts. I'm like, I don't know about the title. And yeah, I guess I was right about that. What happened was they couldn't get the film. Normally in those days, everything went into the newspaper and you looked up the movie you wanted to see, and there was a couple pages of films playing. Well, they put our film on the page where the porno movies were because of the title. On that page, it was all grayed out. That was how you could tell you're on a porno page. And, the movie suffered because of it, but it's actually a pretty good film, and Paul really, I thought, if you look at it again through new eyes, it's very Hitchcock. It's a little bit graphic in its gore, probably a little bit beyond what Hitchcock would have done. But, who knows if Hitchcock was around at that time doing that type of film, somebody would have probably got their head whacked off on camera eventually. But yeah, it was. That film, right at the beginning had that scene that was added to it. Wasn't in the script. And I think what happened was the distributor looked at it and said, you got to punch this up in the beginning, so the audience knows there's something bad going on, and make it really graphic to stun them. Because I never saw a head come off in a movie before 1974 and go tumbling down the hallway like that. Normally you would see it, but it would be a shadow on the wall, and it would just be shadows with the head falling, or you'd hear an axe swing, and then you'd hear a plop. But this one, they actually kind of show it. Somebody steps out from behind camera with a machete. You don't see them, but that head went.
Now, you said Ozzy read his lines on the teleprompter.
Yeah.
And you said you started acting or was on My Three Sons at 10. How did you memorize your lines, or was that also tough at 10 years old? And why do you think Ozzy couldn't memorize his?
Well, there was a reason. For me, I had no problem ever memorizing lines. And even on My Three Sons, we could be shooting, and if it looked like we were going to wind up the day early, they'd come to me with like 5 pages and say, learn this, we're going to shoot it in 5 minutes. So
wow.
Yeah, I'd have to learn it really quick, and I just had the capability of doing that in those days. Now, these days, I don't even know who my name is.
Yeah, well, I'm an actor as well, and I do a bunch of indies things, and I'm like
I know it's really
frustrating,
all of a sudden, you can
like,
remember 3, 4th
Sorry.
guy, but you got Alzheimer's or dementia. Gary, it doesn't happen that much, but I don't like when it happens at all. Well, back to Ozzy with the teleprompter. The reason he had to do that, not only was he in it, he was the producer, the director, and usually the screenwriter, wrangling all the problems that were going on during the day and with casting, and it was just easier to do that. And he kind of worked out this little thing. If you ever watch watch Ozzy and Harry, you see him stammering a lot. Go by the Harriet, he'll do something like that. That's him trying to find his place on the teleprompter. He's buying himself a little bit of time with that stammering that he used to do.
I'll show up to set to film a scene, and I've got everything down, and then they go, and somebody else doesn't know their lines. And then I literally, it's like something sucked my lines right out of my head because I was waiting for them, and now I'm like, I don't even know what my line is anymore.
Right.
It's very frustrating sometimes.
You should try doing plays.
Yeah.
And the other guy goes up, and you're just sitting there because you got another line after him, and you're just looking at this guy that just has like a look on his face like.
Yeah, and one day I knew what their line was, so I read their line as if I was suggesting the thing that they were going to say to me just to save the thing or whatever.
That's what
it's like, oh no, this is
your
not
fellow actor out there, or just that was the fun of doing plays. Doing film work, it's fun, but if you blow it, okay, take 2, take 3, whatever. But on stage, you gotta figure a way out of this. You're doing a scene and somebody's supposed to walk in, and they don't walk in on cue. So now you're, making up dialogue, and it's like, how long can I go with this? Maybe this person died and is never coming in. You're getting all kinds of thoughts in your
Now,
head.
did you do lots of plays too?
I didn't do a lot, but over my career, like maybe once a year, I would do a play. I guess it was for about a 7-8 year period. In fact, a couple times I did it with Barry. We'd go off. We did it when they had dinner theaters around, and that was like, it was super fun. They usually had 8 or 10 people and be like an ensemble cast. We did See How They Run one year, another play called Natalie Needs a Nightie, which, because it was being done in the Midwest, was changed to Mischief. Like, even Natalie Needs a Nightie was just too much. It would have been like Private Parts, putting that in the play. You wouldn't have been able to get it in the newspaper. We did a bunch of plays, and it was always fun. It was fun working with non-Hollywood kind of actors, and you develop this camaraderie from you're there for a month rehearsing, or at least 3 weeks we got, and then the show would go on sometimes 16 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, we would sell out, and usually I think they did 12, but with us they were doing 16-week things, and we got extended another week one time. They said, you guys want to stay? And we stayed. And we had a lot of fun, doing that. And it was a way to get away from Hollywood, get well paid, and meet other people and other actors. And You just prayed you didn't get a movie while you were there. In fact, that happened one time. My brother had to tell the producers, I just auditioned for a movie, and if I get it, see you later, at that point. So I just want you to know so you can have another actor in the wings, maybe an understudy or somebody that can step in. And normally that never happened before, but this one time it did. And he wasn't in the last week of the play. They actually had to bring this poor guy in like a week earlier, and he just sat there and watched, 8 performances that we did. And tried to study what Barry was doing and where he's at. But, when he actually got up there the first night, he knew his lines, but he just didn't know where to be. I remember I felt like a shepherd, moving him around the stage, put my arm on him, walk him over here because you need to be here because this was going to happen next. And a couple times he forgot his lines, and, you get him back on track. It's crazy. I've been in theaters where you wouldn't believe the stuff that would just happen. I was there once where all the lights went off. It just went off. They were having a thunderstorm. The electricity blew out. So we're like, oh, do we keep doing the play, or do we wait here? Do we crawl off stage? And then another time during the intermission, the stage manager, he says, you guys may hear like a really loud scream during the next act. And we were like, really? What's that all about? He goes, there's a snake that got into the theater.
Oh,
We
no.
can't find it. And sure enough, about 15, 20 minutes into that second act, there was like a commotion and screaming going on out in the audience. But that's what made it fun too, just the unpredictability, and, you just didn't know what was going to happen next.
Yes, I did a couple plays, but
practical jokes.
I did a couple plays, but I have wicked ADHD, and with plays, like you said, you have to be here to sit down in this chair. You have to be here to open this door. You have to be here to pick this up or put that over there. And I'm trying to memorize lines and remember where I'm supposed to be. And sometimes it was a musical, so I have to remember these songs and these dance moves. And it was just, for my ADHD, it was too much. I'm like, I cannot do theater because there's too many things going on and I can't focus on all of them at one time.
Yeah, I kind of looked at that as the challenge, to see what would go wrong and whether I could handle it or get through it or make up dialogue. There's nothing worse than being in a scene where, near the beginning or something, the phone rings and you have this conversation, and then you're like in act 2, and suddenly the phone rings and you go, what's that all about? Because the phone's not supposed to ring there. So, you're trying to make it real. So you have to go over and pick up the phone and have a conversation like you would in real life if it's ringing.
Yeah,
it's crazy, the kind of things that could happen. You're just hoping it didn't happen to you, then it happened to another actor. It's like, ha, you got to deal with this. One of the worst things I ever saw was some poor lady, I think it was an off-Broadway play, and it was, again, a phone, and the phone rings and she's talking, and it was on the back wall, like in a kitchen, and she picked it up and she's walking forward. And what she didn't see is the phone in the basement fell off the wall. And so the audience is now laughing because they saw the phone walk. And this poor lady's doing the conversation. There's no phone on the wall anymore. It fell off. And, she's doing it. Meanwhile, there was all this snickering and laughing going on. And this poor actor had no clue as to what was going on or why they were laughing.
It was in the future, a phone without, a digital phone, a cell phone.
Yeah, this was before cell phones, so you're hardwired. And it wasn't like the play wasn't funny. It was like Death of a Salesman. All this laughing going on. And I'm just like, oh my God, that poor lady had to go through that. I saw a play one night where some guy, they had the set so close to the edge. It was a dining table with 4 chairs, and they used it a couple times, during different scenes. But this guy got up, was supposed to be in the middle of the night, got something out of the refrigerator, comes downstage and sits in the chair that's like the closest to the edge. And I mean, it was like an inch, the 4th leg by that. And sure enough, man, I don't know how he moved, but he moved and right off the stage into the audience. And when he went over, he kicked the table. It went backwards, hit the back wall, and then the wall fell over, and all the actors were standing there. I mean, it was almost like a Neil Simon play. It was so insane what happened. I just remember what the guy said. He's laying on his back on the ground, and he got up and he slammed his chair back on the stage, and he goes, It's been a hell of a night.
I was stage crew on Peter Pan in high school when I was in like 10th grade or something. And there's a scene where the kids in Peter Pan run out and get in bed. And they had cots on the stage for the beds or whatever. And the cot collapsed. And the guy playing the father without missing a beat goes, "Looks like you guys are getting too big for these beds. We're going to have to get new ones." Fixed the bed and went on with
Yeah, that's how you do it.
Yeah.
The funny part too is, when you're doing, like, even in My Three Sons, there would be things happening, but they're being done purposefully. Anyway, what happened one time, I had an eating scene that we were picking up, and I was supposed to be in the kitchen eating an ice cream sundae that they had made. I had a couple of scoops of ice cream, and it looked like chocolate syrup and whipped cream, and then a cherry on top. So I remember they said, don't eat it during the rehearsal. We only have, one or two of these. So if we need to shoot it over again. So I thought it was weird because a lot of times they just let me, fool with it, but they didn't. So I, went ahead and rehearsed and then went off, changed into my clothes, came back in, we started to shoot it. And then I remember the director came out, he says, do me a favor. He says, just don't take a bite to the very end. Don't eat it till the end, do all your lines and after you do your very last line, take a big scoop and then have that. So I was like, okay. So we did the scene and I took a big scoop. Well, it wasn't ice cream and whipped cream on it. It turned out it was mashed potatoes with shaving cream on it.
Oh,
no, it was so gross.
Surprise.
But yeah, everybody was like on the ground laughing because they knew I'd been set up. But stuff like that would happen regularly. Can't even tell you, or you do things right before a scene. I remember one time, I think it was crepe paper or something. And I think I put it on Red McMurray. I took a clothespin and hooked this piece of crepe paper on his jacket with like a clothespin. So when they were doing the scene, when he finally turned around, it looked like he had a tail. So that took care of that. I think he was kind of pissed, but we were always doing stuff like that to each other just to have fun.
Oh, that's awesome. So you started on TV before you were 10. You're on My Three Sons for 12 years. So your formative years, you're learning a lot, and you have your own production company now. What were some of the most valuable lessons you learned in the film industry growing up, with everything around you?
I think the most valuable lesson I learned is if you're going to stay in it, I think you need to know more about all the processes that are there, not just the acting. I think the more things you can sort of appreciate it from another person's point of view, meaning the director's point of view, from the producer's point of view, from an editorial standpoint. So that's kind of how I charted my course. I thought, what, I'm going to learn all these other things. What better place to do it? We had all these old timers working on My Three Sons, from the cinematographer, the cameraman, the editor. These were old seasoned pros, and actually a couple of people we worked with that had Academy Awards, from their years doing it in the film industry. So I availed myself and drained their brains dry, basically. I learned everything I could about cameras, lenses, film emulsions in those days, sets, production, how to set up a production schedule, how to edit on a moviola, and then eventually that moved on to chem tables, and then eventually came to linear editors, then non-linear editors, and then the digital editing systems we have in this day, Final Cut Pro or Avid or Media 100, Adobe Premiere. So yeah, I tried to learn everything I could, and when I was finally sorry about that. When I finally had a production company, I knew how to do something. If my sound guy didn't show up, I didn't care because I knew how to set up the mic and where to set it up. And same thing with the camera. I knew how to set that up and just do everything. I think you really need to know everybody's job, especially if you plan to be a director or producer, because how do you know when this guy's not doing it right? I've had situations where I've had a boom man, and I'm looking at him holding the boom up, but I see the mic instead of pointing here, it's pointing over there, and I'm like, what's that all about? So I'd come up, and grab the end of the microphone and tip it back where it's supposed to be and go, I'm watching you. You know, the mic shouldn't be over there. You're off axis. Because even if you're slightly off with a mic, you got that kind of sound like that instead of like this, you know. So same thing with, you know, in those days they had a lot of different film emulsions we used depending on the circumstance you were shooting or how the look you wanted. So I just, decided I'm going to learn everything I can possibly learn. And that's what I want to bring to the industry. And, you know, you realize, especially with casting, you know, as an actor, I'm always was in the casting room as a, you know, potential actor, but to be sitting on the other side of the table and not realizing, you know, what comes through the door there, that's another horror story, because there's people that come in that aren't prepared, people that are supposed to know the lines that didn't know the lines, or you have a scene that's like tense and some guy brings like a, you know, big butcher knife to the audition. You're sitting there shaking in your shoes knowing nobody told that guy not to do that, because they're never going to be invited back into the room again. They're gonna go, this guy was crazy. He brought a, you know, 12-inch knife to an audition. Scared the hell out of me, but I never want to see him again. Wow. Yeah, so there's all kinds of mistakes. Like I said, I kind of aggregated all this at one point. I guess it was about 10 years ago. I did this program called The Actor's Journey. And what it is, it's a 10-hour program, not on acting. You know, it's on basically the business of the business, the non-performance skills you need to be an actor. And those are hard to find. You know, you can go to Yale or Harvard or a mom and pop acting school. And basically you're going to learn how to act in front of a camera or on stage. But, you know, you finish those classes in a year or two. And, you know, if you're going to Yale and Harvard, you just drop north of $100,000 and you graduate and you go, they forgot to tell me how to get into the business. You know, what do I do first? Who do I call? This guy said this to me, but that didn't sound right. So we kind of did this program to really just demystify all these things that you should be doing. Yeah, most people think they're going to be doing acting. And what you find out if you're at the end of a career like I am, of being in the industry for, you know, 60 years, you know, that's the thing you do the least is the acting. The thing you do the most is try to get work and, you know, try to find out about opportunities and, you know, not squander opportunities when they're there because of preconceived notions you may have about the business or, you know, what a certain part means. And you turn it down. So, yeah, I did this 10-hour program. I brought in, it's not taught by me. It's basically taught by 100 people from the industry who had 40 years of experience or more in the industry. I think 45 of the people had either won or been nominated for Academy, Emmy, Golden Globe Awards. 2 of them were the presidents of different unions, the Screen Actors Guild, the Directors Guild of America, people that sat on the various boards there. But, you know, it was producers, directors, showrunners, agents, managers, every way you could look at acting or a particular subject in acting from a plethora point of view. So it's, you know, gives you a head start. It's a good thing to know what you're doing before you do it. You know, it'd be like deciding you want to open a restaurant, but you haven't taken a cooking class yet. You're probably going to poison a couple people and the restaurant's going to close real quick. So it's sort of the same thing in show business. There's things you can do. And it's such a small business and the casting people all know each other. And a lot of the producers know, you know, that if you're doing something wrong, they don't give you a second or chance. You're just out. Nobody wants to see you ever again. You know, it's terrible, but that's how it is. So you want to go in. You got one chance to make a first impression. And, you know, that's what you want to do. And you want to do it really well because you may not be right for that part, but you don't know that, you know, you don't really know that. But if you're really good, these guys go on next week. They're doing another show. That director's doing another show. The producer's doing another show and you get called back because maybe next time you are right for the part. So, you know, there's all different ways to look at this stuff, like I said. And, you know, if you think you're getting in it just to act, like I said, I did it for 60 years, but if you threaded up every movie, every TV show, even My 3 Sons, you know, 380 half hours, it might be a month's worth of stuff. So that means the other, I guess you'd say 59 years and in 11 months, I was looking for work.
I've been entertaining, acting, writing, whatever for 35 years. And I do a lot of independent stuff. And the cool thing about that is you can learn how to direct. You can learn how to do sound. You can learn how to do this, that, and the other thing. And the one thing I notice all the time when I'm working on one and we just grab some person, not necessarily off the street, but we're like, hey, run the boom. There's the wire that comes down from the top from the microphone that goes down to whatever it is you're listening to. And they're always going slap, slap, slap with that because they're moving it around, and it makes like horrendous amounts of noise.
Oh yeah, if you have your hands up like this and you're moving your hands.
Yeah, and you can hear that feedback, but people don't realize that. They're always trying to move around, and they're making all this noise and stuff. And I'm like, stop already.
Yeah.
But,
well, they just don't know. Because what you have to do is put a pair of headphones on them and go, okay, now do that. Tell me what you hear. Oh my God.
Exactly.
Point it at my mouth, the mic. Okay, and now point it over here. Do you hear the difference?
Right.
Big difference. But yeah, that happens. You know, if you're there to learn other things, it's a golden opportunity. But you know, a lot of actors just do it and then they go back to their dressing room. They're not interested in that part of it, and you know, they lose out on an opportunity to learn a lot of things. You know, and I mean, just something that simple, you can learn it. You look up and see the mic pointing over there. You're going, are they really recording my dialogue?
Yeah.
You know, maybe you want to bring it to somebody's attention.
And a lot of people who I've worked with will tell you he's the first one to arrive and the last one to leave. I'm always the first one there. And if there's, you know, if someone needs a boom operator, I'm your guy. If you need somebody to film this shot, I'm your guy. I'm always willing to learn, just like you said, everything that goes along with it, because you need to know all that stuff.
Yeah.
But
well, in the actor's journey, we tell a lot of stories like that about being, you know, just with your ear to ground, just paying attention. My brother did I think it was a commercial once. And for some reason, the other actor didn't show up. They're waiting and waiting. He never showed up. They just grabbed, you know, some crew guy who looked like he could be right and said, could you do this? You know, I'll give you a couple minutes to learn the dialogue. Wasn't a lot of lines, but that guy got cast in the commercial. And, you know, appeared in it. And, you know, my brother had to go to the audition and 2 callbacks to get the job. So, you know, it's crazy how it can work sometimes.
Auditions are my weakest thing because I never know what you are looking for. So I'll come in audition for you and you're like, you're kind of like an old Western character. Here's the lines. And I'm like, okay, do I play it like, well, you know, they're bound there, they're snaring a girl, or do I, you know, how do you want me? And you won't tell me. You want me to show you something, and I never know what it is that you want.
You're not going to get a lot of help from directors. That's
you
have to remember most of them don't know what they're doing either.
Right.
It's up to you to bring whatever you're bringing to the table, not only to the audition, but you know, to your job when you show up. It's critical because a lot of times you don't get any input from the director at all, and the reason they hired you is you did something during the audition and they, oh, that was kind of interesting. You know, I've seen people that just make a decision to do this little thing or a little way they read the line or they throw a shout into it or just did, you know, some reaction. And that's the whole thing. I can watch commercials all day long and tell you why the guy got hired, because this little thing he did right here, or the way he said this line, got him, you know, the job. And that's what the director's looking for. And usually the producer, you know, they're just looking for somebody to do. You have to remember, if you're calling in 50 people to an audition, it's a commercial audition, maybe 20 people if you're casting a part, you know, 19 of the people are going to do the same thing. And there's going to be one guy that does something different, that took a risk. And that's the guy that gets hired. You know, that's kind of the stuff we're trying to tell people in the actor's journey. So it's implanted in your head so that, you know how to go out and get work. That, you know, you don't want to be the 19. You want to be that one guy that, you know, figures out how to do something different. Doesn't always work, but, you know, in a lot of cases it does. And then a lot of times it just comes down to who you know. You know, you walk in and there's a guy you know, directing it that you worked for before. And, you know, that camaraderie happens. My brother he did a lot of commercials for a while there. And one of the, I thought, most interesting cases was, it was a Heineken commercial, and he went on the audition and 2 callbacks, and then he got to the set and was in makeup. And I think it was the assistant director walked in and said, have you got the sides yet? And Barry said, oh yeah, no, I'm ready to go. He goes, oh. He goes, He says, have you seen this? And Barry, he goes, well, what's this? He goes, these are the lines you got to say. And Barry goes, well, what was the other thing? He goes, oh, that was like a ruse. He goes, we're doing this commercial and we didn't want anybody to know what it was.
Yeah.
So Barry goes, okay, I can learn this pretty quick. And he says, oh, have you met David yet? And Barry's like, no. So he said, well, come with me. And so he went out of the room and around the corner and introduced Barry he said, Barry, this is David Fincher. And Barry's sitting there going, wow, holy moly, nice to meet you. And they go, have you met Brad yet? And he said, no. So he went around the corner, it was Brad Pitt.
So seven.
Turned out it was a Heineken commercial that was being made for the Super Bowl, and it was top secret.
Oh, really?
And Barry and Brad Pitt were the only two, people that had dialogue in it, and it was shown once during the Super Bowl, and then in Japan it played there. But anyway, you walk in and you just think some guy out of college is going to be directing this, but a lot of people outside the industry don't realize there's a lot of big directors that do commercials in between, and David Fincher, happens to be one of those. So you don't know, and there's a lot of actors goes, well, I shouldn't do commercials because that'll ruin my career. It degrades you, and then people won't take you seriously. But anyway, about 6 months later, he walked in on an Orville Redenbacher commercial. And guess who was sitting behind the desk? Fincher. Guess who got hired? Barry.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've got a zillion stories, and that's why I brought in all these people that I knew for the things we're trying to illustrate, to have them tell this story, because it makes an impression on you, because there's a lot of preconceived notions about things you should or shouldn't do. I have another friend, you would never think you could get into motion picture industry and become a top actor that way, but he came right from Folsom Prison. So
wow.
He went in, he wasn't an actor, and he was basically helping as a drug counselor when he got out. And some guy called him that was on a movie, a crew guy, and said, I need some help. There's drugs around here, and I'm trying not to do, I need your help. Says, okay, well, I'll be here. And came up and he said, what's this? He goes, it's like a movie set. And he goes, oh, okay. And so anyway, somebody recognized him, and he says, hey, were you like a medium heavyweight or something? That I think I saw you box at Folsom Prison. And he goes, yeah, that was me. And so this guy went over and told the director, because it was a boxing scene in the movie, and they needed somebody to choreograph it. So they went back to him and said, can you choreograph this boxing scene? It's pretty short, but we just need somebody that knows what they're doing. And he's like, what's choreograph? You know what they're talking about. And they go, well, you just show the other actor. And so he said, well, wait a minute. He said, do I get paid? And he's like, yeah. He says, you get paid. He says, you get paid $600. And he's like, hey, $600? How bad do you want this guy beat up? And so he said, no, this is the star of the movie. You don't beat him up. You're just going to, swing soft punches. Just got to, show him how to turn and how to throw the punches. And a lot of time we're going to only see you over the shoulder and see him. But when you swing, you can't hit him. He'll go like that, like he got hit. So they kind of got that through. Anyway, so he did it. It ended up in the movie. I don't know if you guys ever saw a movie called Runaway Train.
Yeah.
John Voight. Remember?
Yeah, John Voight. Yeah, I got that on disc.
There's a boxing scene, and Eric Roberts is boxing. Yep. Well, that's Danny Trejo.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That was his start. So, yep.
How about that?
Yeah, we have a whole
Great
thing,
story.
the actor's journey, because a lot of people think, everybody came from Yale or Harvard or some big acting school, and it's not the case at all. You bring your look.
That great tattoo on his chest as well.
Yep. Sometimes they make up over it, so it's not there, and sometimes you see it. But yeah, he's just, a nice guy. Made some mistakes when he was younger. He goes, hey, this is a lot easier than robbing liquor stores every night. I like this. $600.
That's amazing. So the actor's journey, where is that available?
Well, it's going to be coming up again in about 2 months. We had it as a DVD product probably about 4 years ago, and then I ended up moving and got involved in something else. Will be coming up as streaming media at this point. Awesome. But yeah, it's a whole, originally, like I said, it was 8 DVDs. They're about an hour and a half long each. There was about 65 segments, because everybody, oh no, I know the business of acting. You get a reel, you get a resume, you get you try and get in the Screen Actors Guild and a couple other things, and you're good to go. And I go, no, that. And if you do those in the wrong order, you're screwed right from the beginning, especially joining the Screen Actors Guild. It's the last thing you want to do if you're a new actor, and we'll tell you why. But yeah, there's like 65 topics that we went and go over. So literally with a fine-tooth comb, because I said, I never want to come back and have to do this again, but there's probably a couple things that I should add to it at this point. But yeah, I had great people. And like I said, I just didn't want it to be a lecture, but it to be illustrated as to why you do it. And, here's a chance to learn from other people's mistakes that they made, so why keep reinventing the same wheel? So yeah, we should have it up. Like I say, in probably about another month, I should have the thing up, and you can either watch it all or watch parts of it or watch, just various sections of it, depending what you think you want out of it. But being 10 hours long, it kind of grows out of each segment, leads into another segment. So, we usually advise people to start at the beginning. You'll get the most out of it that way. And then, you can hit the hit the road running and get your career launched.
Awesome. Well, definitely let us know once you launch it, and we'll do our best to share it.
Okay, yeah. I'll shoot you a email or a link, and you'll know what it's all about. Yeah, we did that, and we did a companion piece too, because I started as a kid actor, so I thought, wow, maybe I should do the same thing for the parents who involve their children and teens in it, and that's a real disaster area if you don't know what you're doing. So yeah, we did another 5-hour-long program for the parents of child and teen actors, hopefully keeping them out of a lot of trouble. They're the ones that make the biggest mistakes. It's terrible what happens.
Yeah, you certainly hear a lot of bad stories.
Yeah.
I know we ran a little bit over on time. I apologize for that. Before we wrap things up, your production studio, which I do have information in the show notes up above or down below. What type of, so we work with, a lot of filmmakers, a lot of actors. What type of businesses are you trying to bring in for your production studio? Like we do some work with like Bill Diamond Studios, and he does like the full production.
Yeah, it really just depends, what we're doing right now. I'm sitting there waiting for this COVID thing to be over. I've got a sitcom pilot that's the thing I'll probably be working on next. And I've got some movies, but movies are pretty tough right now just because of what's going on with the industry, with streaming and everybody trying to be Netflix. And I don't know what's going to happen to Netflix, because they're not going to have the ability to license material from all these studios anymore. Studios looked at it, especially in lieu of what happened with COVID and nobody going to the movie theaters. They're looking to generate, revenue another way, and streaming is the way to go. So they've all invested hundreds of millions of dollars into infrastructure, and all the studios have these vast libraries of content. That they used to license to Netflix. So they're not going to be licensing that. They want to be Netflix. Whether, who will win, I don't know, or whether there's room for multiple players like Universal and Warner Brothers 20th. They all have great content, MGM.
Yeah, you got Disney Plus and Paramount Plus and all these other people doing their own thing now. So yeah, like you say, eventually they'll pull everything off Netflix to put onto those separate streaming things or whatever. And no one can afford them all. So you're going to have to say, okay, I think I want the Fox library, so I'll subscribe to that. So
it's just another way to figure out how to get you to pay more. Originally you paid for, TV was free, broadcast.
Right.
When cable came along, you paid for that. And they kind of upped the ante by licensing movies, new movies that just moved out of the motion picture theaters. We're on that, but now it's sort of like, for a while there it was free again because YouTube came up. You could watch almost anything on YouTube, maybe not first run movies, but stuff that was a year, 2 years old, and then all the way back to everything you ever thought of was there. And now with the digital rights management, you can't watch anything. A thing will come up and say, go here and pay for it, rent it. So they all want to be in the rental business. And now that the chains like Blockbuster have gone away, or 2020 Video, there's that's the only game in town.
When I was Oh, go ahead,
Oh,
Leo.
no, I was just going to say you still have Redbox, and I think you still got people paying for cable like $300 a month and stuff for.
Oh, that's
crazy.
As people move away and go directly to streaming, I mean it's even if you get a good handful of these streaming services and they're priced right, it's you can get quite a few. Like Discovery Plus just came out, and that's like $6 a month and tons of content on that.
Yeah, I think I've got Hulu and Netflix. They're about $6, $8 or $12 or something. So they haven't. But you know what? I hate to say it. I watch YouTube more than anything. I just get in a mood where I'm either on a news binge, which I guess I was for about 4 years while all the politics was going crazy.
Yeah.
And then, I find old movies on there that, I liked, and some of them are, you can still watch them, or, you can go somewhere and pay for it if you want to find it. Or lately I've been into watching old music groups. I just look at it as all the concerts I never got to see are finally up on YouTube. Like I can find the Beach Boys in like 1966 performing somewhere, and sometimes the quality of it isn't super great, but I just I think I've seen every Beach Boy thing in the last 2 weeks. I just
my father had rabbit ears, and we had to like turn it this way to get channel CBS, but then he had to turn it this way to get ABC, and he had to move it across the room.
Hang onto the antenna, and then it came in. As
Yeah.
soon as you let go, it would go away.
Yeah, so my
Or you
dad
put
would be like,
tinfoil on it.
my show's on, stand there and hold this for an hour.
Right. It's like that Mr. Bean episode. I don't know whether you ever saw it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, where he brings the TV home and he finally gets inside of a box, but every time he peeks out, it goes back off. I mean, it's hysterical. But yeah, I remember we had tinfoil all over ours.
Yep.
These big tinfoil flags, and I don't know if it worked or not. Yeah, it was pretty crappy, to be honest. But I mean, if you look at Beta SP now, you see something in Beta SP, which, was like so clean and beautiful, or so you thought, till you, saw something in high resolution. You go, oh my God, that's like watching 8mm film, when you see something in Betamax now.
Yeah.
Terrible. But I don't know where it's all going. I guess the 8K and 16K.
Yeah, it's taken a step back though because of the streaming, and people's internet connections. It's it's hard to get 4K sometimes too. But
yeah, you can't. I think the news and sporting events. So why bother to have it? The way I look at it, it's not realistic. Everything we turn in is just high def. That's it.
What's amazing though is LPs are coming back. People are just buying record players again and listening to vinyl, which is like, wow, that is so weird.
I never got rid of mine.
No, I know, but I'm saying like
original
people are
Beatle
rediscovering vinyl. Like you put an LP on and you put the same CD on, and the LP sounds way better than a CD does. It has this sound that's just phenomenal. But
I think you always heard some hiss underneath.
Right, but it still was a better sound with that. Even if you get
scratch and it crackles, I still like it. Well, like I said, I'll never get rid of my albums. I've got all my original Beatle albums that I bought when they came out.
Nice.
Mine says on the back of it, Sears. I bought it.
Oh, nice.
A mono Meet the Beatles album. Yeah, it's crazy. I have all the Beatle albums. Yeah, everything from that era. It's just music crazy. When I was on My Three Sons, and obviously Don Grady, he was a true musician. But yeah, that whole British invasion and what was going on back then was just totally amazing. Nothing like it, now, which is sad for people, that are listening to the newer music. But, if you're young, you don't know the difference.
No.
You don't know that rent in LA used to be about $100 a month. You think it was always $2,500 for a 250 square foot studio apartment.
Yeah, I remember listening to like all my 45s when I, 8, 10, 12 years old. I'd play them so much that they, end up skipping. So we'd be listening to like Elvis' Suspicious Minds, and they'd go, "We're caught in a trap. I
think I've got that on my own, but mine is even older. It's King Creole.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
King Creole. Yeah.
Creole.
Yeah. There was a man in New Orleans who plays a rock and roll. He's a guitar man. Yeah. One of his best movies and one of his best soundtracks, in my opinion. But yeah.
His movies got bad towards the end.
He hated doing them too. he got in fight with many directors over that because he's like, dude, these movies are stupid. I don't want to do them anymore. But the Colonel had him in like a 5-year contract that he couldn't get out of.
When you're in a movie and it's called Clam Bake, you run.
and you're singing clam bake, gonna have a clam bake. And it's like, come on, Elvis, seriously. But he wasn't writing the songs. He just was forced to do them. But yeah.
Well, he wanted to be in West Side Story. He was up for that, and they wanted him.
He was up for Star Is Born.
That was a real musical and a real acting job he would have done, and would have probably changed the trajectory of his career.
Yeah, he was up for A Star Is Born, but Chris Christopherson got it because the Colonel said, this is a bad move, don't do it. And he listened to everything the Colonel said. But yeah.
It's too bad something didn't happen to the Colonel.
Yeah, but...
Somebody's beeping.
I know. I'm glad you're an Elvis fan, though, Stanley.
Oh, yeah, all the way. Well, I lived in Hollywood, so I used to be at Wallach's Music City every day, Sunset and Vine, and you could audition, records there. They had booths, like about 20 booths, so you could take 45s or albums in there. My dad would go on one side, and he'd be listening to operas, and I'd be listening to Bobby Darin and Elvis and Dion and the Belmonts.
Yeah, that's my kind of music. So that reminds me of a question. So, like, my question for you is, if I could have met anybody in this world, it would have been Elvis Presley, and unfortunately, I never got the chance. Is there some person that you wish you could have met or worked with on a show or a movie that you did not get a chance to meet or work with?
Well, Elvis would be a good choice. I watched a lot of old movies. I guess I was a fan of, just 40s, 50s film. The guy I always wanted to work with was Peter Lorre.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Oh, Johnny, not the snow way.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was, I don't know why I liked it. Just his expressions, and he was just a great actor, just everything that he ever did just really impressed me. But
yeah,
it's hard to say. I mean, there've been so many people, it depends what era you're talking about, and it's overwhelming.
Yeah. No,
I was in My Three Sons.
Yep, someone's beeping again.
Phil, he's apologizing. He had an emergency, so he had to drop.
Oh,
gotcha.
Oh, yeah, we're missing a man.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I just, I'll be 56 in November, and I appreciate what you did, on My Three Sons, as well as, all those shows from that time, those shows from that era, up until, Walton's Brady Bunch era, Family Affair, some of the other stuff we've talked about really inspired me to want to be an actor, because I didn't have the greatest childhood. So I watched TV as a way to escape what was going on in my real life.
Yeah.
And I said, thank you to these people who are on TV who gave me an escape. And I said, this is what I want to do to maybe help somebody else someday that's going through the same thing, and they can watch me on a movie or a TV show and escape from whatever's going on in their life. So
yeah, I think those shows were, provided a lot of comfort to people who did have, rough upbringings or wish they had a dad like Steve Douglas. But I think, one of the things why people remember these shows so fondly, not just My Three Sons, but all of them, is back in those days, people didn't have TVs in every room, and each person has a TV. My era, even in my own household, we had a den. That's where the TV was, and we watched TV at night at home with our family. My mom, my dad, my brothers, and I think back on that, and that's kind of warm and fuzzy, as opposed to being in my own bedroom and watching something else.
Right.
But yeah, I think it just kind of, there's not a lot of things you did with your family, maybe go on vacation, but TV watching was certainly one that, it was like a ritual every night where you'd eat dinner and we'd all go in the den, or a lot of times we'd eat dinner in the den while we were watching TV, with TV trays and stuff. And,
right. And every night you had a certain show. So it's like, oh, tonight the Waltons are on, and you'd get around the TV to watch that, or Little House on the Prairie, or whatever. Again, I was born in 65, so I kind of missed the My Three Sons original run era. Yeah, but
we watched Ed Sullivan on Sunday night. I don't think we ever missed that, because it was always somebody. And then by 63, I was Beatle crazed. And, that was, oh no.
We lost your video, Stanley.
This is Rod Sterling.
There's somewhere people keep texting me.
Oh,
That the
no worries.
camera? Whoop, camera? No camera? Okay. How do I come back?
There should be a camera button on the bottom
of the screen. Yeah.
Yeah, I see when I hit that, but that took me to another. Oh, wait, let me try that. Oh,
There it is.
There
Yes.
we go.
Yeah. Exactly. Twilight Zone was another one that was very, the writers on that just, way ahead. Rod Sterling and Gene Roddenberry, in my opinion, were two of the most visionaries from that era, just to come up with those things or whatever.
Yeah,
But
it used to scare the heck out of us. In fact, my parents, when they would go out, they told us you can't watch like Twilight Zone because they didn't want us creeped out while they were gone. And we'd always turn it out and then be frozen stiff on the couch, for a couple hours afterwards. Or we turned on some channel and they would have the Mummy movie. Man, when we saw the Mummy once, when that mummy opened its eye, that was it for me. My hair stood up. And I think we were still in the same position when my parents came back, and they said, "We told you not to watch horror films."
in the
But it was
90s,
kinda fun,
in the 90s, I watched Unsolved Mysteries, but I had to have all the lights on because that show creeped me out.
I did that once. I watched the original, and it's not the greatest movie, but the original Amityville Horror, and I don't know why that creeped me out. And I was an adult.
Yeah.
I was like, watched it alone. I think I saw it at my parents' den. They went to bed, and I was an adult, but I was visiting them. This is on. I think I'm going to watch this. And then I said, yeah, I feel like I'm like 8 years old, frozen on the couch. But it was pretty scary. Some movies are well made and can really creep you out. I don't know if you ever saw The Entity. That's another one with Barbara Hershey.
Mm-hmm.
If you haven't seen that,
I
you want
won't.
your hair to stand on edge. Or The Exorcist. That was pretty good. But I would say The Entity is right up there with The Exorcist.
Wow.
Barbara Hershey she's amazing in that movie, and it's contemporary. That's what makes it so weird, because you don't think it's going to be like a ghost movie, like a regular one, but it turns out to be like the most terrifying thing I think I've ever seen.
Wow. Definitely have to take
everything My Three Sons wasn't. Although interesting, next door where they did Family Affair to us, they filmed the director on that directed a movie that when I was a kid, my favorite movie probably from the late 50s when I first saw it was Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein. An interesting blend of horror and comedy. But a guy named Charlie Barton directed it, and it turned out he was the director for Family Affair. And so he's one of the directors, I used to go over and pick his brain and talk about that movie. And yeah, he was a really cool guy. In fact, he directed all the Amos and Andy, the series too, all the episodes. So
you can't beat those Laurel and Hardy, Three Stooges, Abbott and Costello, those, Marx Brothers, those comedy teams back then. Their timing and everything was like impeccable. And
it's that kind of comedy,
that vaudevillian stuff, it never gets old. And it's like, you don't realize what geniuses these people had to be to, like Laurel and Hardy, just with the looks and the, facial expressions. If
darn it, sorry,
it's okay.
No worries.
I keep getting like texts or something, and they keep bothering me.
We should probably wrap this because we've been an hour 40.
Yeah, we're approaching 2 hours, so we'll take that as a sign. So I want to urge everybody, definitely check the show notes up above or down below, depending on where you're watching or listening to us. And Stanley, check out his production studio. And for me, just Google Leo Pond. You'll find a bunch of stuff. Could be true, could be not. I'm not gonna say which is which, but more importantly, follow these awesome people. And Stanley, where do you like people interacting with you on social media?
Well, I have a Facebook account. If you just go to Facebook and type in my name, and there's kind of a logo there that says My Three Sons. It's blue. If you go to the brown one, I kind of lost track of that one. So as long as it's kind of a bluish color, you'll find me there. Or I have a website, stanleylivingston.com, or as you mentioned, I have a production website, firstteamproductions.com. So
awesome.
People can get a hold of me
Cool beans.
those venues. Yeah.
I'll send you a friend request, and I got all those links in the show notes as well. RW, where do you like people interacting with you?
Right there. Well, you can check everything I've done for the most part right here at officialrwmartin.com. I'm also on Facebook, which is RW Martin. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere. Most of the time, you can just find me by typing in VT Actor 007, and you should find me there. But yes, I'll be sending you a friend request, my friend, and thank you for joining us tonight.
Hey, I had a great time. It's good reminiscing and chatting with you guys.
Totally.
To do it again someday.
Totally. It was an absolute honor. PJ, where do you like people interacting with you?
Best place, you can find all of our stuff at throwdownthursdaypodcast.com. We have our, news and articles and whatnot. You can also check out Throwdown Thursday on Facebook. All our links are there, especially if you go to the website. All the links are there for everything. So, check it out. Listen to the show. You can also check out our YouTube channel. I just won a minor battle with Disney over some of the copyrighted material that we showed in the live stream that I just did for Shark Bites with Powerful Brandon. And, I fought back against them, and they were like, you know what? You're right. And so I actually beat Disney, which was something crazy. So they put our video back up.
That is awesome. Congratulations. And like I said, everything's in the show notes. And just head on over to thedorkening.com. We got almost 40 shows on the network, which is absolutely insane. A lot of awesome people doing a lot of awesome stuff. And with that, we'll catch you guys later. Yep. Bye.
Adios, amigos.